Thanks.
I'm going to drive this. And if you could take one of each.
Okay, I've got to print it out here.
Oh, super.
Yep. Pens here. I'm gonna grab a plate. Do you want one?
Okay. Thank you. Gonna need those. You're going to do this for Dan on Thursday.
Yeah, that's right.
Gosh, you know, if you can't get a teaching job after all of this free volunteer stuff, I don't know what we can do.
I talked to.
I'm teeing it up for you as much as.
I emailed, what's his name? Jim Stevens.
Jim Stevens, yeah.
Well, they emailed Scott Shaw, and he said, sounds great, email Jim Stevens. They emailed him. And he's very nice to take some talk to him next time you're on campus. I mean, it doesn't sound like.
Yeah, I think this is a short-term problem.
Right now.
Yeah, it's a short-term problem.
I also talked to a guy that Ben recommended over at UDM. Ben Ellison recommended.
Yeah, Ben's a good guy. You remind me of Ben.
And actually, it was a guy who I'd sat on one of Ben's reviews with. And he was also great. He was like, definitely we'll get you on the list here. I think I'd emailed him a little bit too late for this current semester. But it sounded like maybe there'd be opportunities for future semesters. So you never know.
The issue with UDM, as Michael is telling you, is you have to go part-time here.
Mm-hmm.
So they have their classes during the day.
Right.
And they're 3 days a week.
Yeah.
They're like 2 to 6. So.
Yeah, it would be a big commitment.
I got so many students, I can't even remember all of them. Some of the classes are at night, but they tend to be more of like law, Revit, sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
Both time. So like before, this is the second time I've done this for you. I assume all of you can hear me. If you are presenting tonight, can you please make sure that you've uploaded your project plates as a PDF to the folder in our Comprehensive Design Studio so that we can open them on this large screen for the benefit of Christoph and me to see them, because we're running the Hangout as a separate thing and right on my my tablet here, okay? Thanks.
Mark?
Be able to see okay from that?
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10.
Got 12 in the studio. So.
Yeah. or 13 rather. I just saw Louis here. Thank you, Nancy. And I didn't forget. I actually invited everybody twice for some reason tonight. So I'm not sure how some of you, like Andrew and Rasha and others, got in the class early, but so Luis and Michael are the ones that are dragging, and that's unfortunate because they're both presenting tonight. So what I'd like to do for the next 4 minutes is go about some sort of protocols for the next 2 evenings, beginning in a few moments here. So this is Benchmark-1, which is a part of the overall semester's modules. This falls within module 2, as you know. So this is a graded sort of moment. This is a performance assessment opportunity for not only you individually, but for all of your colleagues and our guest critics to review your work, so that you have a clear and sometimes maybe even more confused sort of perspective on how you're doing this semester vis-a-vis the assignments and the tasks. And so what I need all of you to do is make sure that you've printed or have at hand the ability to document through the grading rubric, through the grade sheet that I sent you over the weekend for the first group of students tonight, so that you can process those remarks and comments and then save them in the file format that I asked you to make my life a lot easier in the sort of distribution and dissemination of them back to each of you, which I'd like to do on Saturday morning. So I will need your comments by the end of Friday, or whenever I asked you to do that. I'd like that by that deadline so that I can return them. Similarly, any guest critics that we bring in will make their own comments, and I will share those comments as they are written directly with you, but privately, okay? And then, of course, as you already know, I prepare my own grade sheet for you, irrespective of, and usually in intentional detachment with the grade sheets that I've seen from each of you and from our guest critics. Because I have a different relationship with you, I have a different expectation of your work, and I have a history of grading that's a lot different than, and of course I have the university to protect, but I have just a different sensibility about grading than maybe any of the other critics, yourselves included. So my grade sheet comes last, and it's the one that binds you to the rest of the semester. That's the first thing I want to say. I want you, so I hope there's no questions on that. If there are, you need to like give me the waving white flag or, okay, so I'm assuming none. I'm not hearing any. Okay. The second thing is we will conduct one half of the reviews tonight, and we will conduct the other half of the reviews on Thursday night. You need to be in attendance for both of them. And if for some reason you're not able to be in attendance, you need to watch the 3 or 4 hour video and in order to make sure that you're able to provide comments. Even if you've been excused, or if you're sick or get hit by a car or worse, you still need to watch the video and you still need to grade your colleagues. All right, so you need to give them your time and your perspective. This is an essential sort of part of the transaction. Any questions on that? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to introduce you to Christoph Eibel. Christoph's on the screen. Hello. He's waving. Christoph is an architect in our office. He's led several important projects, not the least of which is 123 Edwards, which of course is the site that y'all are working on right now. It's a site he's uniquely prepared and interested to talk about, and he's uniquely qualified to talk about work out of Lawrence Tech's Comprehensive Design Studios, because as I think I mentioned to you, he's been reviewing work with Professor Farrow's previous Comp Design Studios, and he's going to be on campus Thursday afternoon doing the same thing, but for a different sort of project site. I think Professor Farrow's studio is focusing on a community center, or a student center rather, in Phoenix, where it's always sunny. So that could be interesting. In any event, Christoph has also served as a very important critic in several, if not all, of my advanced design studios up to the point that at least he joined our firm 2 years ago. So we're excited to have him back. I'm going to let him manage this computer, so you are going to see him. I will be across the table from him, so you won't see me until I pop in. But you need to give me an audible prompt like next slide, so that we can make sure Mark advances the next slide. This is something you need to be alert to. It needs to be part of your script. Otherwise I'm going to get lost and interrupt you. Finally, the fourth thing is you will be given 7 minutes tonight to present your script, your drawings, your words, and that will leave us a chunk of time to review the work with you in conversation. And I'm affording you this luxury of time tonight, and I will do it on Thursday night, and I will do it for the next benchmark review in order to work towards concision and compression. So we'll work with the luxury of time tonight, and we'll continue to compress that time so that by the final review in December, you'll have even less time and more to say, proving that it can be done and that it's important that you craft your abilities in public speaking as the semester evolves. So tonight you've got a lot of time to present, and you've got an awful lot to say. Remember that Christoph actually, while he's prejudiced to the site and the project, maybe he knows nothing about what you're doing except from the lovely project statements that you made. I do not have the sign-up sheet easily handy, so can I ask Eric to someone who's not presenting tonight? Okay, so Josh, could I ask you to prompt me of who the first presenter is and then who the next one is? Can you be the third base coach? Thanks. Sure. And so who is first?
I don't know yet. Give me a minute.
Rasha? Rasha is. And Rasha, no surprise, has hers already uploaded. So good luck. I'm going to have a timer going, and I'm going to open Rasha's and give. So let me see.
So if you can just open it up to the first page of the file.
Can I turn this up
here?
Okay, good.
Can we have another sound check?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Okay, perfect. Well, hi, I'm Rasha. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, so Mark, if you could go to the first page of the document.
Yep.
Okay. So this is, well, this one is the incomplete one. So this is the parking garage. We need spaces and just with so, but he's on the upper corner, elevator and stairs, and then you can see the middle on the south end is a core that composes of the stairs, another elevator, and then the storage space, and the storage lockers, and bicycle storage. I apologize for this. This is the parking. So you can go to the next level, and I can talk about this point. So my design focuses around a open courtyard in the middle, and this is the ground floor, where the entrance on the left-hand corner, you can see the vestibule and this is the entrance to the building. And then there's again the elevator and the stairs with some retail on the Elsa Street. As well as the corner on Rod R. And then what I did here was, so we have two things I want to focus on was an exercise room and a yoga studio. So they're both on the ground floor, so whether it's the classes one on whether the students have to pass, they have direct access to that open courtyard, as well as if the seniors are exercising and they want to do some lightweight, you can go outside as well. And we have two entry points, one from Alfred Street and to the open courtyard, and then as well as the one. And I want to be able to use the alley in a strategic way, so it's also another community communication. And then in the core here we have the main electrical, as well as the meter room, generator room, trash, and then the dog washing station.
Rasha,
and then you see into the left side, a big chunk of it goes for parking room.
Rasha.
Next. Page 3.
Can you hear Mark on mute? I can't hear.
So all of the retail is all of the residential is on the. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
But somebody else, it sounds like somebody else is
Somebody.
Oh, no.
We can hear you too, Josh. I think he's muted now.
Sorry, somebody muted Mark. I can't hear.
Yeah, I did, but I don't know how to unmute that.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Mark, all the students are getting a lot of feedback through your microphone because your microphone's on, so the student speaks, and then it goes back through your microphone, and then it echoes to everybody, so nobody can hear
I'm sorry.
what Rasha's saying.
Okay, so I will mute mine. That's right here. Until we get into the question and answer period.
Thank you.
Okay, so give me the thumbs up just so I can start talking. Good? Okay. So we're back. I hope you guys understood what I said before on the previous slide, but I'm just going to keep going. So on page number 3, so we have all the residential is placed on the first level 1 and above, so level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we have a couple different sizes, approximately all ranging around 750 square feet for the residential units. And again, these rooms, once you exit your room and you're able to view down looking into the open courtyard. And again, there's a laundry, so there's also a laundry room on every floor, as well as a trash room. I specifically wanted this because I understand how difficult it is to be able to do your laundry and also take out your trash. If especially it's not on your floor and they are seniors, it's a lot more difficult for them to have to go down a floor and then put their laundry down there. And so then there's a storage room as well as an electrical closet. Since the electrical is on the main floor, we just need closets throughout the rest of the building. And then we can go to the next page, page number 4. And again, here we have residential, again, with the core and the open courtyard, and there's a terrace, a private terrace on the north side facing Alfred Street. Once we get to page number 5, which this is level 4. So what's different here is we have the residential spaces again, and then we have a community space that looks out into the alley. So there's also, and this is a double, it opens above to the level 5, the community space. So it's a higher room. And then we go again into the next page, side number 6, which is level 5. And then again, we have the residential units, and we have the community space looking down into the community space. And then we have the terrace on the private terrace on the north side. So I was really trying to focus both on having private and public and semi-public spaces for the seniors to be able to interact in. And here also, what my goal is for once I start laying out these rooms, I want to play with the actual, with whether they're going to have their own private terrace or they're going to be extruded outwards into a little more into the street. It just depends on how once I lay them out. I didn't want to restrict myself yet on that portion. And then on page number 7, we have what I'm planning on doing here is the green roof and solar panels. I know we're pushing for sustainability, so having that will push it even farther. And then, so my plans are what speak most about my project right now. You can see on page 8 they're plan elevations right now. 9, the same thing, and then 10 we have 2 different sections that you can see. And then on page 11 and 12, I have a couple of 3D views, so you can see how the courtyard is in the middle, and it's almost the centerpiece for the overall design concept. And I haven't decided. So again, with the exterior, with the facade, I haven't decided what material that's going to be. So I didn't place that as glass or anything yet, just because I wanted to wait and see once the rooms are laid out and how that can affect the facade type that I choose in the end. And that is all. So I'm gonna hand it over to you guys.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Yes? Okay. So this is going to be, so how are we going to talk back and forth?
Well, she'll have to keep hers mute, I think, and listen as we kind of like a walkie-talkie, I guess.
Okay. So I guess, first of all, can you tell me a little bit more about what it was that drew you toward the courtyard typology? And that's sort of a comment about the presentation in general too. You've got a lot of information here, considering that it's early in the semester as far as showing the plans that are very clear, but I'm missing a little bit of the concept and some of your thinking behind what took you in this direction initially. So can you just kind of fill me in on that, and I'll mute here. Oh, sorry, this is.
Yes. So one thing where I was looking at the courtyards is, well, initially I was looking at different case studies, and a lot of case studies had smaller private courtyards. And then also I was looking into different a cultural aspect, because actually Islamic courtyards are very popular. And so I was looking at that in comparison to different case studies that we had, that we looked into initially early on in the semester, and also thinking about seniors. And seniors love to be outside. So, and they love to, and I know, you know, my grandparents, for example, love to be able to just people watch sometimes. So I wanted to create these spaces where in some portions they were more private and some were more public, and then having it all connect throughout the building. So for example, let's say the seniors didn't want to leave their apartment, but just being able to look out into the space, so they're able to open their door and then look down and see people interacting with each other. That was one of the things that drove it. But again, just having these spaces where, and specifically this space where all the different rooms can connect with one another, that's what drove this design in particular.
That's great. I mean, I think that's a really rich basis for starting this project, and I think it makes a lot of sense. By the end of the semester, the goal, I think, will be that you have the kind of renderings and diagrams and different views and things that support that concept. But early on at this stage, I think it's okay to put some of those precedent images and other things in your presentation that you might be looking at for inspiration. There's nothing wrong with making that a part of your presentation right now. It'll help clue in, you know, the students and reviewers and other people that are looking at your work, and should also provide you sort of a reference point for things that you want to achieve in your own project and not lose track of. And, you know, so whether that's images that you're taking from precedents, or sketches that you're doing, or just other things that have kind of inspired where you've gotten to, I wouldn't be afraid to incorporate those into the presentation. And then as you develop your own work, try to get at the essence of what you find appealing about those images, sketches, etc., and try to imbue your own work with that. So how much time do we have to comment? Do I have a while here yet?
Do you what?
Do I have a while here yet to comment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about your awareness of the context and how that might influence form.
Sure. I had a few points I wanted to make about that. Can we go back to the maybe like a first floor plan? Oh, and then actually, sorry, can we go back to the elevations and sections? This is just a general comment, and I'm sure you're not the only one that it will apply to tonight. It's understood you're very early in the project and don't expect to see super developed elevations and sections of things at this point. But what I would encourage you to do is, and it's okay that you have everything in Revit, and I understand that makes presentations easier, but I would encourage you to try to sketch or draw these elevations and sections before they just materialize in Revit, so that you have some intention as far as what you're going after, and then use Revit as a tool to help you represent what your goals are, versus just seeing what Revit spits out. Just that's just sort of an aside. So if we can go to Mark, like sure, we can go to the ground floor plan. One other comment about your presentation before we start talking about the building itself. Again, I do appreciate how everything is really cleanly presented, and you've got everything well documented as far as plans, sections, elevations. The scale of the plan drawings seems a little strange. Like it's not showing enough to be, actually it might show enough to be a site plan, but you don't have enough information as far as the immediate context around it to serve as a site plan. You know, where are the other buildings planned and existing? The streets are not super clearly delineated just because you have all of the noise from, you know, however the site has been represented in terms of the elevation changes. So that's definitely a drawing that I would work on to help show how your building fits into the context. And then for the building plans themselves, you could increase the scale so that it takes up more of the sheet. It looks like your scale is 3/64 of an inch equals a foot. That's not necessarily a common scale, so I wouldn't feel like you have to stick with that scale for any reason. I think it would work fine as a site plan scale, but for the building, you're really gonna wanna zoom in so you can see more of what's going on. As far as the building itself, a couple of things that stuck out to me. One, the opening to the courtyard where it opens onto Alfred Street. I like the idea that you have this courtyard that's sort of a private space, but it's also conceivably accessible from Alfred Street. But as far as what that connection is actually like, that's something that I would play around with a lot. Right now, it looks like sort of a narrow passage that might be a little bit dark and uninviting if you were to actually sketch what that looks like or model it in 3D. And maybe it does want to be this little slot that you barely even notice is there. But I would do a ton of iterations of that connection and what that looks like and how that changes the character of your project. It could be that, because Alfred Street too is a fairly quiet residential street. So I feel like there's an opportunity to open that up further to Alfred Street without losing some of the more quiet, restful, peaceful aspects of the courtyard that you're interested in. So I would play around with that, and whether the opening is 1 story or 2 stories, or the height of the building, whether the whole building cracks open at that point. Well, I guess then you would have to figure out how circulation works. But you know what I mean? That's something that I think could be pretty cool, because the courtyard is sort of it's the dominant organizer of your project. And so I think the relationship of the courtyard to the context around the building is super important, and that'll be something that will be interesting to see how you develop that. Can we go up to the 2nd floor?
Mm-hmm.
3rd floor, maybe? 4th floor, I guess. Where did you have the community room? 4th floor is the community space. The community space, to me, also seems a bit strangely placed, because on the one hand, it's not really close enough to the open courtyard to take advantage of that proximity. And on the other hand, it's sitting on maybe the least advantageous corner of the site, facing the alley and facing a building across the alley I mean, alleys can be cool spaces too, but it's facing a building across the alley that's really close. I mean, it's right up alongside the alley, and it's a tall building. It's 8 or 9 stories. So that's going to be kind of an odd space for the community room, I would think. And the other thing that's a little strange about the floor plan right now, and I know you're working some of this out, is obviously you have a lot of space that you're not using in the lower right corner, the southeast corner. I mean, you could almost fit another residential unit there, or reorganize things somehow to take advantage of that space. And can we go back down to the ground floor?
Of course.
And if you want to interject at any point, just wave your hands or something, and I'll mute myself. Otherwise, I'll keep talking now. So it's also a little odd to me. I'm guessing the main entrance is on Alfred Street in the northwest corner, right? It seems like a lot of, I don't know if you, like, would you need that second elevator down on the alley? If you were going to have 2 elevators in the building, I would either put them side by side or take 1 elevator out of the building. I don't know. What do you think?
2 were required in the
2 were
program.
required.
One would have a hi-hat in it, so it could allow for and be reserved for move in, move out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why that's why you'll see 2.
Okay.
All night.
Yeah.
So I suppose. Sorry, did you want to say something? Here, hang on. I'll put myself on mute.
So I thought of putting them next to each other, side by side, but I also wanted it to be easier for the seniors to be able to have access the elevator easier. So it's instead of 2 of them being side by side, 1 is on either end. So wherever you would live, it doesn't take you as long, to be able to exit the building. So that's why I separated the 2 elevators and put them near the 2 opposite egress stairs.
So knowing that, and okay, so in general, another thing I wanted to talk about, and I'll come back to the 2 elevators in a minute, is the making 90-degree corners everywhere seems like sort of a default decision in some ways, but on this site, it's also, I think it's something that you should also be conscious about, because as you can tell, obviously the site is not a perfect square with 90-degree corners. So what you're getting by doing that is these little slivers of space around the perimeter of the building, which is not a good or a bad thing, but is something that I would think about in terms of how you're developing those spaces and how you would like people to use them. For example, are they just, wider sidewalks and the width of the sidewalk changes, or are you trying to create some outdoor spaces there where people can sit or park bikes, etc. And I wanted to come back to what we were just talking about, because you've created a little a sort of widening pocket of space down on the alley and if you're going to have a second entrance to your building there, that makes sense, because like I was mentioning, it's a super tight alley right now, and you definitely need a little bit of relief in order to use it as an entrance into the building. And I think that'll be, again, because it's a tight space where you're not getting a lot of light back there, I think that'll be important to pay attention to and make it feel, inviting enough to be used as a second entrance into the building, even though it's not your primary entrance. And I don't know, I mean, maybe try kind of maybe try playing around with the angles of the site and the angles of the building. And if you end up with a square with 90-degree corners, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as you're being intentional about why you're doing that. I mean, in the real world, people would probably, there's an economic advantage for doing that, in terms of it's easier to create those details in those corners, and it's cheaper, to be honest, but you don't have to worry about those things right now. So you should do it if it makes sense for your project, but if it doesn't make sense, you should think about other things.
We have to wrap up. Thank you, Rasha. Unless you have anything else to add to the conversation, otherwise we'll move on.
Do you want to mute it? Oh, okay. I know. I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate all the comments that you mentioned, because I 100% agree with everything you mentioned. It gave me a lot of good ideas. So like now I can start sketching. So I appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rasha.
No, it's a nice project. Look forward to seeing where it goes.
Josh, can you tell me who's next?
Yeah, that's Michael. Did you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Should I mute you again?
Yeah.
Wait till he starts talking.
Go ahead.
Okay, do you guys see my PDF in the folder yet? Do I have to wait for that?
We're waiting for you to upload it, Michael. You got it in the right folder?
Yeah.
It's not showing up.
Do you see
I've got Carmen's. I've got Nancy's, Rasha's. Oh, something just popped in. I stand corrected. I'm going to mute myself.
Okay, looking at the first slide here, it's just a picture of our site. Basically, the way I decided to understand the form of the building was through sunlight. Going to the second slide and third slide, you see the amount of buildable space we have available. When you get to the fourth slide, I took the southeastern edge down in order to allow the most access to sunlight for the rest of the building, the apartments up above. And what I really liked about that is it created the space in between these two taller parts of the building where I want to put a community garden that's accessible to all people within it. If you go to the next slide, I started shifting around the shape of those two towers in order to try and maximize the facade of the building. And then the next slide was introducing circulation. I didn't go with this specific plan, but I did use it as a basis for the rest of the plans. If you go to the next slide, it's kind of a, it's an okay rendering. I just pasted it on top of the building. But if you go into the next slide, you see the floor plans. The first floor plan, right now it's just separated for apartments. I currently have 52 apartments in the building, so some of these spaces on the bottom floor will be reserved for vehicle access to the parking garage beneath, the leasing office, maintenance, things like that. And then if you're looking at this first floor plan in the upper right corner, the northeastern side, there's a large vacant space that I left for retail space. I haven't developed how it's going to be, but going to the next plan, you see that that space is unimpeded for 2 stories, giving it a the ability to be a grander retail space and really activating that corner between John R. and Alfred. Going to the third plan, you can see how more of these spaces are created. I personally wanted all of the apartments to be involved in the outdoor sense of it. None of the apartments are designed yet, but each of them is a minimum of 1,000 square feet. And forms of egress involve going onto this walkway and then walking to the stairs or to the elevator. The stairs and elevator need to be looked at again because I don't believe per code I can have a 12 straight steps of stairs in a mid-rise. But that going into the fourth plan, you see more similar, but each plan has the plan beneath it underlaid so you can see how it steps back in order to allow more direct sun access and in order to create these walkways that aren't balconies per se, but they're the roof of the building in front of them. Going to the fifth plan, there is a large open space in between the top and the bottom that allows for more light on the fourth level, which allowed me to get more rooms in on these upper floors. And then the last plan is the roof plan, which will be an extension of the garden below. Essentially what I'm trying to do is create a cascading mountain of green space that the people living in these apartments are able to see and use. That is all the plans I have printed. I do have a couple of extra images, but they're not super glorious, so I didn't include them. That's about where I'm at.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Let's see. So first of all, a really nice series of initial diagrams that showed us where you were coming from and what you were interested in. Appreciate that. It's super clear. You know, you probably haven't ended up with the building that you'll eventually wind up with at the end of the semester, but the basic concept of those diagrams, I think works really well. You definitely need a section to explain your project. And even if you're not at the point where you're ready to do a Revit section, which you probably shouldn't be, you need to start sketching it and seeing how it works, because that'll tell you a ton about how successful your strategy is to create this kind of terraced garden effect that you're looking for. I think it could be a really cool concept, and I'm excited to see how you develop it. But I have some questions. If we, can I,
This is real quick.
okay, here we go.
Okay.
If we go to one of your floor plans, any of them, so I want to make sure, well, first of all, it looks like you might want to check, it looks like potentially there's a dead end corridor issue in the upper left in the northwest corner. That's not, I don't think that's super important to your concept, but probably something that you should check sooner than later before your plans get too set. But the main thing that I wanted to ask about is, so by stepping back the building around this open space in the southwest corner of the site, you're ostensibly providing more exposure to sunlight, but it's always but your corridor is also running around the edges of that space. So essentially you're just providing more sunlight for the corridor. Am I understanding that right? I'm gonna take myself
And look at this.
off of, hang on one second.
This diagram talks about circulation, and I believe it's highlighting it on.
Oh, that's interesting. So Mark is looking at your diagram where you have is that circulation in pink around the outside, around Alfred Street and John R?
That was my initial concept for circulation. I didn't end up going with that, or rather I decided to experiment with putting it on the front side, or on the southeastern side. So while you're walking around this building, it kind of forces you to interact with not only your neighbors, but also just kind of experience this courtyard in that stepped fashion.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So, but you understand what I'm saying, right? That the units themselves are not really benefiting at all from the stepping and the terracing that you're doing, which I think is okay too, but then it changes your concept somewhat. Then that corridor space becomes super important. I mean, that's like this kind of communal, shared public space that should be really nice. And, you know, it definitely shouldn't be a long 5-foot wide corridor or whatever the dimensions of that are. I mean, it should be a space that you want to spend time in and enjoy, and opens itself up to the exterior. I've just thrown out some ideas out there. Ultimately it's however you envision this space being used. But right now it seems like you haven't quite capitalized on what you're doing formally with the building. But like I said, there's a lot of ways to do that, and there's several different directions you can take that. It just depends on what you're most interested in. One other concept, so that's the main thing. I mean, that's kind of your concept. I think it's a cool concept. You just have to figure out, what your attitude is about that. And the other thing that I want to, oh, sorry, you want to say something? Is that you? Oh, there's somebody else? Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention was, and this is not just a comment for you, but for the last presenter and probably for everyone, is it's okay that not everything is super developed at this stage, but I do think you need to start testing out your units and see how they lay out in terms of, how are you fitting, how many bedrooms are you fitting in there, how many bathrooms are you fitting in there. At the same time that you're developing your building, you also have to be developing those units to make sure that they work, because the risk is that your building plan starts to become too fixed, and you ultimately decide that you want to make changes to those, the proportions of the units to make them nice spaces. So I would really try to push that at the same time.
Can you maybe comment a little bit on the 1,000 square foot and sort of talking about unit design in this context, which all of the units are the same footprint, and the program brief requires 50 units because I believe we can get 50 parking spaces on the site.
Sure.
And the program brief also requires 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom, or some permutation of that.
Yeah.
Like studio as 1 bedroom, or so.
Sure. And that's what made me think of it with this project probably versus the last project, where it seemed, even though those units were also not developed, it seemed, maybe more plausible that you could get some 2-bedroom units that worked there. Here you have these really narrow, deep units, which it could work. It's been done before, but you have to show how it works. And for 2-bedroom units, are those, I don't know what the breakdown is, but can you always put those on corners, or can you maybe start to carve away at the building in ways that provide more windows to units, larger units that you want to make 2-bedroom units, or are you bringing in light in other ways to those spaces? Again, there's a lot of ways to attack that problem, but you have to start thinking about the units, and with the same kind of attention to how you're manipulating the building to allow for light and different spaces. I think you have to think about the units with just as much care at the same time. So that's my impression too. Like Mark is saying, that potentially it can be tricky with those long, narrow units without much frontage on the exterior. But again, it can be done. It's just how you choose to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That was one of my years. I created multiple iterations of the unit, and then I tried stacking them into some semblance of a site, and I think I might have lost a bit focus on my initial goal, which was creating individualized units.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's just something to look at. And Mark is pointing out, we're also looking at your ground floor, which I know you mentioned you haven't finished and you're trying to fit a ramp in here somehow to give access to the parking. But it's really unclear what's going on down here. Like, are these residential units or retail spaces, or some of each? Or your only retail was up on the northeast corner? And I'll unmute in a second to let you talk, but it's, I mean, you know, there's no, this floor needs some attention. There's no circulation right now that I can perceive as far as how you would reach these units, or, you know, what the quality of these spaces would be, because here we're sort of under that, you know, under your large southwest terrace, right? So we're like we're not in the basement, but we're in the plinth here. So are those nice units to have? Your battery's running, but you have a power.
I do.
Yeah, well. I was done, Michael. I just wanted to see if you had any, if you could clue us in onto what you're thinking about that ground floor and how that works.
To be honest, I think I'm gonna have to completely retackle the ground floor. My initial goal with it was to create these skylights through the garden space, which would also then create pathways to walk around it. But I'm not entirely sure how feasible that is, or not feasible, but intelligent of a design move that is. Basically, I agree, and I think I'm going to scrap the entire first floor, besides maybe the perimeter, and try and reconfigure it.
Okay, just curious. And yeah, I mean, I like the idea of using light wells too, to bring light into some of those units. Again, it's how.
Oh, his computer died.
We lost him.
Mike, did you post this on a Blackboard or on the shared drive? I'd like to take a look at it. I just get polite because I joined late.
Yeah, it's on the shared drive. Everyone's project should be on there.
Yeah, there are some here. Alex, Courtney, Nancy, I believe, but I don't see yours for some reason.
Try refreshing the page.
I don't think you're
Make
in the
sure
right
you're going to
one. It's in Benchmark-1 because Alex doesn't go till Thursday, so hers is not in there.
Oh, Benchmark-1?
It's a new folder. It's Benchmark-1, Module 1, Module 2. So it's a completely different folder.
Let's see here. Oh, I can. Okay, now I can see it. Thank you.
Who has dogs?
Mike, are you? Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Just quick note here on the elevator and the stair. I like the light well. It's a very nice floor plan. Very, very nice. I like the L shape and it matches the site very well. I'm not sure though of the organization of your stair / elevators would work. I don't know. Probably you were influenced by the area over something that works for the design. So I don't know how this would work or even achieve the code here.
No, I don't think it would work up to code either. And, not the best sentence to start with, but
but again, I like the organization very well. But it's just the elevators / the stair. Probably you got a comment. I'm sorry, I joined late. Probably you got a comment on.
oh no, they actually didn't mention them. My initial plan was to have the stairs as what's it called, on the exterior. That way they were more monumental and you were able to walk up and down through the cascading tiers more easily. But I decided that wasn't practical, especially not in our climate. And so I just
Okay.
to
It would have been sexy. Very nice. Looks very nice.
Thank you.
If it's on the outer borders, but again, it won't work with the climate of Michigan. Unfortunately, probably Los Angeles by Loha.
I think we should invite Mark to the group. He just sent another Google Hangout. If it's possible to add him.
I'll try emailing him the link to our Hangout.